Welcome back, everyone. And as we continue tonight, I just want to ask you a very simple question. What are you carrying that no one else can see? Because some of the heaviest things we carry in life don't weigh anything at all. Nobody can see the shame when you walk into the room. Nobody can see the regret. Nobody can see the anxiety. Nobody can see the temptation that you're fighting. And nobody can even see the questions you're afraid to ask, as well as nobody can see the prayer you've been praying for months or maybe years that still hasn't been answered, but you can feel the weight of it. And over these last 3 weeks, we've been talking about some of those invisible weights. We started with yesterday, the things behind us that somehow keep reaching into today. It's that mistake, that failure, that addiction, that relationship, that word somebody spoke over you, the things done to us, and sometimes the things done by us. And we discovered something I hope that you will never forget, that your past may explain you, but it does not define you. Your past is part of your story, but it doesn't get to write the ending. John 8:36 says, "So if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed." But then we took a step a little deeper. We went a little deeper because sometimes the hardest things we're carrying isn't behind us. Sometimes it's inside of us. Sometimes it's right here. Paul describes in Romans 7, he basically says, listen, I know what I want to do, and sometimes I do it, and I know what I don't want to do, and sometimes I do it anyways. Is there anybody who relates to that? Anybody relate to Paul? Because there's a battle that happens inside every single one of us. That battle of faith and fear, hope and despair, peace and anxiety, obedience and temptation, confidence and doubt. And sometimes we make the battle even heavier because we start thinking, if I were really growing, I wouldn't still be struggling. But you know what? We talked about something totally different. Learn something different. You can struggle and still be growing. Struggling doesn't mean God has stopped working. Sometimes you're struggling precisely because something inside you is changing. But then last week, we talked about another weight. And this one may be the hardest of all. It's that weight that comes from waiting. Because sometimes when we're carrying isn't something we did, it isn't something we're fighting, it's something that God hasn't done yet. The prayer that hasn't been answered, the healing that hasn't happened, the relationship that hasn't been restored, the door that hasn't opened. And eventually we find ourselves praying the same words David prayed in Psalms 13. How long, Lord? And we discovered silence does not mean God's absent. Just because you can't see God working doesn't mean God is not working. So think about these 3 weeks together. Sometimes we're carrying yesterday. Sometimes we're fighting something inside us today. And sometimes we're worried about tomorrow because God hasn't answered it yet. The past, the present, the future. And isn't it interesting how easily all three can steal today from us? Yesterday shouts, look back. The internal battle says, look at yourself. Waiting says, look around because nothing is changing. But faith keeps inviting us to do something different. It invites us to look towards God because your past does not define you. Your struggle doesn't disqualify you. And your waiting doesn't mean God has forgotten you. Maybe that's what somebody needs to hear tonight. You're carrying something heavy and nobody else knows. But guess what? God does. Psalms 139 says, you have searched me, Lord, and you know me. He knows the part of yesterday that you still carry today. He knows the battle you're fighting inside. And he knows how tired you've become while waiting. You don't have to hide any of that from him. And maybe tonight isn't about fixing everything. Maybe it's simply about finally becoming honest about what you're carrying. Because we cannot surrender what we refuse to acknowledge. So as we move into our next conversations, don't worry about having the right answer. Just be honest. What are you carrying? And what might happen if instead of carrying it alone, you began trusting God with it? See you again in a few minutes.